on BBC Local Radio in Shropshire, North Staffordshire, South Cheshire and the West Midlands. We present Mike Adams and Chris Savory, the Record Collectors, from now until 9 tonight.
With you in the Midlands, BBC Radio.
We're all right.
Tonight on the programme, we are talking to Gerald Main, who is, or reputed to be, the last person to interview Ronald Wycherley, better known to you, our collectors, of course, as Billy Fury. Gerald Main is well known to the BBC as a broadcaster, mainly in the south of England. So welcome to the Record Collectors, Gerald.
Very nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I understand that you met Billy Fury in Northampton, is that right?
He hadn't been well, and he was doing clearly his final tour, and he was touring small venues, and he ended up in a club in Northampton. It was one of these cabaret venues where you'd get the act, and it'd be chicken and chips in a basket. It really was a slightly seedy sort of club, and I think the tickets, I suppose we're going back to sort of early 80s, mid 80s, and it was about a couple of quid to get in, and you saw the act and a chicken and chips in a basket, and it was that sort of turn. And unbelievably, Billy Fury had got a gig at this club, and my editor said, Billy Fury's in town, not playing the big venue, the Derngate in Northampton, but playing this other very much smaller venue. Go and interview him. And Billy Fury, what do I know about Billy Fury? Not an awful lot, although the 60s and 60s music is close to my heart. But it wasn't until I started doing some research and went through his back catalogue and thought, he did that, and he did that, and more than halfway to Paradise. There's a whole list of stuff.
Well,
so
more than 20 hits. I mean, one of the most
Terrific,
successful artists, British recording artists, that we've ever actually had. But, I mean, you're just a bit too young to remember him, obviously, in his halcyon days. But, of course, he had hits in the 80s.
Yes, he did.
As well as. So he was making a comeback.
Around that time, I think it was one of his last hits, Devil or Angel.
That's right.
He'd re-released, because I think he originally recorded it and then went back into the studio and gave it a sort of 80s feel.
Yes, I think Stuart Coleman did the production on that, and Devil or Angel was a massive gold disc, first major hit for one Robert Verleen, better known as Bobby V. Just a little anecdote for our listener there, but I'm sure you know that already. But Billy Fury, I mean, what was he like? What was he as a character? Because when people die, they become legends, don't they?
He was a real charmer, and as a sort of youngish reporter going to see the big stars, you know what it's like. Sometimes they can be as nice as ninepence and they're a dream to work with, and other times they can be, quite frankly, a pain in the whatnot. And you just never know how they're going to be. Although now, with a few more years under my belt, probably like you discover that actually the bigger they are, the nicer they are.
Exactly.
It's those that are on the way up who've had their 5 minutes of fame and fortune who are pains to interview. But Billy was lovely. He did his concert, and I think, if my memory serves me right, he actually wanted to. We'd agreed to do the interview, and we did the interview at the halfway stage in the concert, which was unbelievable. Because normally you do it before this, or just after the sound check. Or right after the concert, but he wanted to do it for some reason. It was in the middle of the middle of his set. He took a break and was having a cup of tea, and he said, "Oh, come in, have a cup of tea." And there was some sandwiches laid out. Make yourself at home. I can't believe this. This is Billy Fury, and he's treating me like another human being. So he's a real charmer, and sort of sat me down and realising that maybe I was a little bit too young at this game, put me totally at my ease and said, "Well, far away, Gerald. What do you want to know?" So he was a really, really nice guy. But I have to say, one of my memories of him, I can picture him so clearly today. He was wearing incredibly tight leather trousers, not unusual for Billy Fury. And he wore this sort of blue flowery shirt. And I was quite impressed, this sort of silky blue flowery shirt.
The tail end of the 70s that spilled into the 80s, really.
But he didn't look well. He had been ill, and that had been well publicised. But he hadn't been well, and he clearly wasn't quite back. And strangely enough, the last question I asked him was, your fans will have read all the newspaper reports, Billy, about he had this strange condition with his heart, and there was
he had 2 major operations on his heart, didn't he?
That's right, and with all sorts of complications too. It was not a straightforward case, and it had been quite well publicised in the papers at the time. And I said, your fans have clearly been worried about your recent health scare, Billy, and he said, "Oh, well, it's all fine now, and I just want to tell everyone that I'm fighting fit and on the way back, and see you somewhere around the country." 2 weeks later, the man was dead.
I know. It's. I mean, did you actually ask him for an autograph?
No, I did. I never do. It's funny, isn't it? You never do.
I think the problem is in our jobs is, and over the years, I've become now, because memorabilia has become such the in thing, and as our listener knows that one day's a piece of rubbish, tomorrow's it's worth its weight in gold. That I can think of dozens of people we've interviewed who I haven't actually asked for an autograph because I thought, it's a bit anarchic to ask for an autograph and blah, blah, blah. But a Billy Fury autograph now. I think you'll find in most of the auction houses a good one go for £100, £150 for a good Billy Fury autograph. And you could just write me off a dozen out, Billy. It would be nice for a holiday, wouldn't it, really?
Well, I've got I suppose the ultimate souvenir, and that I've still got the interview, the Billy Fury interview that the BBC has in its archives. I actually don't have a copy. It's somewhere lurking in the basement of the BBC in London somewhere.
Well, I certainly think it would be, though I think Billy Fury did some BBC sessions, and of course it would be interesting to actually have that entire interview, along with some of the BBC sessions I think Billy Fury did, together as a BBC release. That would be fascinating, Gerald. Maybe some royalties in it for you. Who knows?
Doubt it. Never had the royalties in the past.
If you get the chance, is there any chance that we could have a dub for our listeners of your fine interview?
The fan club were after a copy at one stage. The Billy Fury fan club.
But they're based actually in East Anglia. Somewhere. Yeah.
And I think they got hold of a copy somewhere. I actually don't have one in my possession, but I know that a couple of minutes of it survives in some basement in Broadcasting House and is occasionally dug out, but when you meet the man, and it's funny because beforehand, having been told by my editor, go and interview Billy Fury, and then not really knowing a great deal about the man, but then going to see him, and then of course, as you say, the legend kicks in after someone has died, sadly. I've got quite a good collection of Billy Fury records at home, or at least the greatest hits, and he was a phenomenal talent. He was a real
not a very tall person, though, was he?
No, he's quite a slight. He was quite a slight fella.
I mean, in actual fact, he was slim and lean, which of course it should have kept him alive, really, shouldn't it? If there'd been any fairness with his heart. Any little anecdotes, finally?
Well, not really, no. I mean, just this last question, the irony, really, of the last question, and saying, how any message for your fans, and I'll be back. And he always he sort of had that, still had that sort of 60s romantic image, and he ended the interview by saying, I just want to say to everyone, ciao. No one would say ciao anymore, would they?
Of course not.
But he was such an old charmer and such an old smoothie that that's how he would end, because he was a man with considerable style as well. It may have been in the rock and roll era, and a lot of his stuff was rock and roll, but it certainly had a sort of glamour and style about it. He wasn't the sort of rough diamond that some might have portrayed him as. He was a stylish character and a very nice guy. Well,
for Gerald Main of BBC Radio Cambridge now, you pick a Billy Fury track and we'll play it right now.
Well, my favourite, and there's no great story behind it, I just think it's a super piece of music, is I Will.
And here it is. Thank you, Gerald Main.